Welcome to our channel. Now if you're here for some lighthearted fluff, you've come to the wrong place. Today we're diving into the 15 most dangerous countries for women in 2024. We're talking about systemic issues and a shocking lack of basic human rights. These rankings paint a bleak picture, but acknowledging the problem is the first step to fixing it. Let's get started. First up, we have Afghanistan. Now it's important to remember that Afghanistan has been grappling with conflict and instability for decades, but the situation for women has been particularly dire. We're talking pervasive gender-based violence, forced marriages, girls being denied education, women essentially erased from public life. And if you think the Taliban's return to power in 2021 helped matters, well, you clearly haven't been paying attention. It's like someone hit the rewind button on women's rights, only this time, it's even worse. Restrictions are tighter, freedoms are fewer, and the world seems content to just sit back and watch. It's a humanitarian crisis, plain and simple, and the women of Afghanistan are bearing the brunt of it. Next, we have Syria, a country synonymous with a devastating civil war. Now, war is never pretty, but for women and girls, it's a special kind of hell. We're talking rampant sexual violence used as a weapon of war, human trafficking becoming a sickeningly common trade, and a complete lack of basic medical care. Imagine being denied healthcare because you're a woman in the 21st century. It's barbaric. And as if that wasn't enough, the infrastructure is decimated, society has crumbled, and women are left incredibly vulnerable to abuse. It's a tragic situation, and it's a stark reminder of the human cost of conflict. Our next stop is Yemen, a country often overshadowed by other conflicts but facing a crisis of unimaginable proportions. Imagine a country where child marriage isn't just a tragic exception, it's practically the norm. Where healthcare is a luxury few can afford and legal protections for women are practically non-existent. Now, add a devastating humanitarian crisis on top of that, with widespread famine and disease, and you start to get a picture of the dire situation women face in Yemen. It's a country on the brink, and the women are quite literally fighting for their survival. India, a paradox of progress. Now let's talk about India, a country often touted for its economic growth and burgeoning tech industry. But behind this facade of progress lies a deeply disturbing reality for women. We're talking about a country where violence against women, from domestic abuse to sexual harassment to human trafficking, is tragically commonplace. And the worst part? It's often dismissed, normalized, swept under the rug. The social stigma surrounding these issues prevents countless women from speaking out, and the justice system, bogged down by bureaucracy and often influenced by patriarchal attitudes, rarely delivers justice. It's a stark reminder that progress isn't always linear, and even in the 21st century, women can be treated as second-class citizens. Democratic Republic of the Congo, a cycle of violence. Next up is the Democratic Republic of Congo, a country plagued by conflict for decades. Now, you might have heard the phrase "rape capital of the world" thrown around. It's a horrific title, and unfortunately it's been used to describe the DRC. Sexual violence is rampant, often used as a weapon of war by armed groups, and the justice system, well, let's just say it leaves a lot to be desired. Imagine being a survivor of sexual assault, only to be met with indifference, or worse, blamed for your own suffering. It's a heartbreaking reality for countless women in the DRC, trapped in a cycle of violence with little hope for escape. Saudi Arabia, glimmer of change, long road ahead. Now let's talk about Saudi Arabia, a country often making headlines for its strict interpretation of Islamic law. And while it's true that Saudi Arabia has implemented some reforms in recent years, allowing women to drive and loosening some guardianship laws, let's not get ahead of ourselves. The guardianship system, which essentially gives male relatives control over women's lives, is still very much in place. Women still need permission from a male guardian to travel, work, even marry. It's essentially state-sanctioned sexism, and while there might be cracks in the foundation, the walls are still very much standing. Pakistan honors grim toll. Next, we travel to Pakistan, a country grappling with a complex web of social issues. We're talking honor killings, acid attacks, forced marriages, all horrific acts of violence against women often justified under the guise of tradition or family honor. It's a chilling reminder that sometimes the greatest threat to a woman's safety comes from within her own home, her own family, And the legal system? Well, it often fails to protect women, with perpetrators walking free and victims shamed into silence. It's a bleak reality, and it highlights the urgent need for social change and legal reform to protect Pakistan's women. Somalia, anarchy, and its victims. Now let's talk about Somalia, a country ravaged by decades of conflict and instability. Imagine a country with a barely functioning government where armed groups run rampant and basic services are practically non-existent. Now imagine being a woman in that environment. We're talking about a country where female genital mutilation is still widely practiced, where forced marriages are the norm, and sexual violence is a constant threat. And the worst part? There's virtually no legal recourse for victims. It's a lawless, unforgiving environment, and it's the women who are paying the heaviest price. South Sudan, a nation scarred, women forgotten. South Sudan, born out of conflict, still grapples with its devastating legacy. The scars of war run deep, and women bear the brunt. Widespread sexual violence, displacement, and countless women living in fear. Imagine fleeing your home, seeking refuge in camps with scarce necessities. Peace is more than the absence of war. It's justice, equality, and opportunity. Iraq, war's enduring trauma. Let's talk about Iraq, a country synonymous with conflict and instability for decades. While the war might officially be over, its devastating impact on women continues to reverberate. We're talking about a country where honor killings persist, where human trafficking preys on the vulnerable, and where women face discrimination in every aspect of life, from education to employment. Imagine being denied opportunities, denied your basic rights, simply because of your gender. It's a stark reminder that true peace and recovery go far beyond rebuilding infrastructure. It requires addressing the deeply rooted inequalities that continue to plague Iraqi society. Central African Republic, a nation held hostage. The Central African Republic is trapped in a cycle of violence and instability. Armed groups hold sway, and the rule of law is fragile. Sexual violence is rampant, used as a tool of war and control. Forced marriage robs young girls of their childhoods. Imagine living in constant fear, never knowing when violence might erupt. This is the heartbreaking reality for countless women in the Central African Republic. Nigeria, Boko Haram's reign of terror. Now let's talk about Nigeria, a country battling a complex web of challenges, including the rise of extremist groups like Boko Haram. While Boko Haram's reign of terror affects everyone, it's women and girls who are often targeted most brutally. We're talking about kidnappings, forced conversions, sexual slavery, all carried out with a horrifying impunity. Imagine being abducted, torn away from your family, forced to live a life of unimaginable cruelty. This is the tragic reality for countless women and girls in Nigeria, and it highlights the urgent need for a multifaceted approach to combat extremism, address its root causes, and provide support and justice for survivors. Mali, traditions and tribulations. Next, we travel to Mali, a country grappling with political instability and cultural challenges. Mali's rich history and vibrant culture often come at a heavy price for women. Female genital mutilation and forced marriage inflict unimaginable pain and suffering. Tradition should never shield abuse. Progress means challenging harmful norms and empowering women. Sudan, a fragile transition. Sudan is undergoing a fragile transition after decades of authoritarian rule. There's hope for a democratic future, but conflict and oppression cast a long shadow. Gender-based violence remains pervasive, especially in regions like Darfur. Harmful cultural practices still hold sway despite being challenged. True progress demands a shift in attitudes to value and protect women. Brazil, beauty and brutality. Brazil, a country of vibrant culture and stunning landscapes. But beneath the beauty lies a darker reality of violence against women. High rates of domestic violence and femicide cast a long shadow. It's a stark reminder that deeply ingrained sexism fuels violence. A call to action, breaking the silence. Well, there you have it. A glimpse into the harsh realities faced by women in some of the most dangerous corners of the world. It's heavy stuff, we know, but it's important to remember that awareness is the first step towards change. By shining a light on these injustices, by amplifying the voices of the women fighting for their rights, we can help create a world where every woman, regardless of where she's born, can live a life free from fear and discrimination.